I'd like to call the meeting to order. The pledge of the flag, please. Pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Attendance, Sean?
Board Member Aversa,
Present.
Board Member Dean,
Present.
Board Member Kimball,
Here.
Board Member Larkin. Board Member Larkin just sent me a text message requesting the phone number to dial in. I will send that to her. And Chairman Sirianni.
Here.
Board Member Larkin, I just sent an email with the phone number.
Okay. Presentations.
Mr. Chairman, we have with us tonight Charles Trottier from Drescher Malecki. Drescher Malecki is the board and authorities rate consultant. And the purpose of his presentation this evening is to provide his analysis of whether or not the proposed budget meets the debt service coverage requirements of our bonds.
Thank you. Good evening. Yes, we look at the budget. The goal is to make sure that the water board is in compliance with the debt service coverage, not just for 25, but we also do a 5-year projection in the event of new debt construction happening. As we'll see, the debt is an important factor in the debt service coverage. So the coverage itself essentially is saying that your revenues less your operating expenses need to be over 1.15% or 1.15 of your debt service payments for the upcoming year. So that's what we'll go over. And it's important. It's a good time to do it at obviously as you're putting the budget together, because as you'll see, your budget is a balancing budget. Your revenues match your expenses, but there's this little gap between our variations and yours. Whereas we don't focus on the budget itself, we focus on historical figures. We want to reach that 115% of your debt service coverage, your debt service payments. So on the first slide there, our role is to provide that independent cash flow estimate that's sufficient to meet your debt coverage. As I said, 115% of your debt service payments. And what we use to develop our expectations are historical trends. We look at 10 years of data. We'll take some outliers. We saw 2023, the hypochlorite solutions went up dramatically, so we'll remove that in our 10-year average. We use the most current available information based on discussions that we have with employees here at the board. We look at year-to-date figures. So this year we received information through November 30, 2024. So we're able to extrapolate that and project out what's an extra month going to add on. And we look at the New York State retirement information, some health insurance publications that have been issued to see where 2025 costs are going to end up. So if you go into the analysis, the coverage ratio itself, again, it's cash flows. So operating revenues is first. We're going to focus the critical components there. Obviously, your water and sewer rents, your interest earnings, which have been very favorable the last 2 years, licenses and permits and city payments, your operating expenses. Those critical components include, we'll break out employees' salaries and benefits as the largest cost factor with your contractual costs. And the denominator there is your debt service, your principal and interest that's payable in the coming year. So again, as we'll see, it'll be a 5-year projection. But again, if there are any plans to issue debt in the future, all this calculation becomes kind of moot. So we'll have to update the presentation as we find out if debt is being issued. On the next slide, this is what it looks like, and we'll go over the assumptions. So on this chart here, you see the audited numbers as of 12/31/2023, which is the most reliable information that's available to date. And then everything else is estimated. And we start with 2024, and 2024 is mostly built off of, as I said, those year-to-date projections. So we receive reports through November 30th, 2024. We project it out, and that's what your projections looks like. The first number that I want to mention is your water and sewer rents. You see there about $950,000 decrease from the prior year. In discussing with management here, we talked about some efficiency for Cascade and fewer surcharge billings. And of course, accidental closing a few years back has had some lasting impacts on consumption decreasing. So there's not much left impact from accidental, but there still exists. So some consumption decrease in water and sewer rents, of course. Had there been a rate increase in 2024, that also would have been a factor, but that didn't happen. So 2024 sewer and water rents are trending down through your year-to-date projections. Interest earnings last year, very, very positive. You historically had about $600,000 to $800,000. Last year came in at $1.7 million. Continued to be high throughout 2024, but in the future, it's hard for us to project out. The market might come back to levels it was in the past between that $600,000 and $800,000 figure. And then when you look at your operating expenses, salaries and benefits, contractual, you see pretty steady increases. Again, most of that is going to be 10-year averages of where you've stood in the past. Your debt service, that comes right out of your audited financial statements. That's what's upcoming to be paid on your existing debt throughout the next 5 years. The line 12 and 13 at the bottom there, you see what the ratio, debt coverage ratio that we are analyzing is. 2023 audited figures, you'd be at about 1.91. Based on how the year is looking to date, we believe the debt service coverage ratio is going to be met again this year at 1.32. And then when we project out for the remaining period through 2028, we don't want to just meet the 115%. We want to give you some little buffer, 5% over. So we always try to analyze and build our projections so that you're at least 120%. And the very bottom line, you can see 26, 27, 28. We project again, well, the first number there, 2025. Bottom line 13, recommended rate increase for operation and maintenance. We believe, based on the information that's available to us, based on the budget, that a 0% rate increase would allow you to meet the debt service coverage ratio at least 120% for 2025's budget. Looking in the future, we believe that you need a built-in 3% rate increase to stay at about 120%. Again, things might change, but based on our analysis, that's what we're looking at. So going into some detail on the next slide. Contractual cost, 2024 projection. That's a $360,000 increase from audited 2023. That's about 2.5%. The projected total is about $14.7 million. The increase from the prior year, as we're seeing in the year-to-date projections, are hypochlorite solutions, $100,000, other chemicals, $50,000, computer equipment, and repairs of equipment. So pretty minimal for contractual costs. To go up 2.5% per year, that's very reasonable from what we've seen in the past. Looking ahead in 2025, we see another $220,000 increase. That's even less than your 2.5%. That's a 1.5% increase from 2024. That's based on the 10-year average, but it's also been decreased in our assumptions based on what we've seen the bid pricing fall at for a lot of your chemicals. Beyond 2026, that 10-year average is about 3.7%. So that's what we build into our model. Salaries and benefits, your 2024 projection is $600,000 increase, or about 4.5%. There has been new approved contracts that became effective, resulting in step increases and raises for your salaries. And health insurance costs as of year to date, November 30th, 2024, they're closing at about 9% higher than they were in 2023. For 2025's projection, the 10-year average that I talk about is 3.5% for salaries and benefits. But for our projection, we use 2% this year, based on known reductions in staffing that we've been made aware of. 2025 health insurance projection based on Government Accountability Office and Society for Human Resources Management, 8% increase in health insurance. That's included in our model. On the next slide, focusing on revenue. So that's how we build our model. We look at your costs first. We look at your personnel salaries. We look at your benefits. We look at your contractual costs. We see where those trend, and then we focus on revenues. When we focus on revenues, we look at how your consumption is trending. And then the bottom line is we know what debt service payment is. So what's left is how much do we need to raise rates to get to that point. So for projecting revenues currently through November, there's a decrease in water and sewer rents of 2.4%, down $940,000 from the prior year. Decreased consumption, as I talked about, some efficiencies resulting in less surcharges from Cascade, and again, some very final lasting impacts from Occidental. 2025 projection, we're anticipating a slight increase from 2024 that's did trend down based on the new production line from Lindy. Another major factor that has helped over the last 2 years is your interest earnings, as we talked about, $1.7 million in 2023, $1.2 million, $1.1 million in 2024. At some point, we believe decreased interest earnings are going to decrease. One factor that also helps your interest earnings over the years is when you've had to issue debt, some of those funds get placed and earn interest on it. So as your operation accounts and your bank accounts start to go down as you use them, there's fewer monies to invest. But at this point, nothing indicates that your cash flow is at any risk for that matter. So the bottom line, again, the rate increase. So once your expenses are analyzed, your revenues analyzed, we believe that a 0% rate increase will allow you to achieve your debt service coverage for 2025. But beyond in 26, 27, 28, we do believe that a 3% increase will allow you to maintain not only your costs and your debt service, but be over your debt service payment by an extra 15% there. The very last slide there just puts in your budget in that very simplified model. Operating revenues of $40,900,000, salaries and benefit broken out to total $33 million. So your revenues that's available for debt service is 7.9, but your debt service is 7.9. So as I talked about earlier, you produce a zero or balancing budget. So the debt service is included in there. That does give you a debt service coverage ratio of 1, which is standard. So you have to find those added savings in your cost or raise more revenues than was anticipated in the budgets. That's where our model differs from your budget. Any questions?
I have some questions.
Yep.
A few. Any indication from the state of any increment in the contribution to the New York State Employment Retirement Service for 2025?
Yes. So not dramatically. New York State has, I believe, at least the comptroller says every year, the best retirement system in the country. It has seen some dramatic gains, but he continues to increase his rates. So the 2024 retirement invoice came in higher than 2023, and the 2025 projection is also coming higher than 2024. Not dramatically, but we're talking just under $1 million. So there is a slight increase in the pension.
So that'll be what, about approximately?
I believe it's about $760,000.
Right.
As opposed to
I
700.
know the system is probably Tom DiNapoli is one of the best state controllers ever to hold that job. I'm a recipient also. So another thing I had going. Your projected revenues, SIUs are down. Would be down $1 million through 9 months. Does that kind of say $1.2 million, $3 million for the entire year?
No, that's through the full calendar year. That projection of being down
okay.
just shy of $1 million.
Okay. That's about it.
Yeah, real- I have no problem with 0% increases for this year. But I hate further out, you try to make it up. You know what I mean? Like, are we better off going 1%, stay at 0%? Or are we looking at a 3% raise?
That's what the model's projecting. So if we increase 1% this year, the model can be amended so that next year might be 1.5%, or next year might be 2%. But absolutely, anytime, and I think that's what we potentially have seen in the past. When you go 2 or 3 years of 0%, it's going to catch up. So that's at this point, based on the data that's been available, 0% does get you to achieve that, at least the 1.2 bottom line that we're comfortable with. But moving forward, based on where the numbers are going to stand this year, to think about what SIU billings are going to be next year, certainly something to monitor.
Well, you know, auto, the rates, our citizens, residents, have been hit with some big increases in the last several years for whatever the reason. And maybe it's good that we give our residents a break, a little bit of a break in the 0%. We look at it. I think Sean and Mike done an excellent job putting this budget together, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
No questions.
Thanks for your time.
Renee, Colleen, do you have any questions?
I'm good, thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't have any questions, but I would just like to say that I think that now that we know that we might have to do a rate increase for the next few years, that we really buckle down and really do serious budgetary planning in order to try to do as much as we can to alleviate a major increase for our ratepayers. Because I know that our ratepayers are concerned about the rates going up, and before we had issues regarding our chemicals spiking so high, and that's why we had a major increase a couple years back. So I want to commend Sean for his hard work that he's done on presenting us a budget with 0% increase. And like I said before, we need to start planning immediately to see what we can do in order to make sure that we don't have a major spike in the increase in the next budgetary year.
Thank you, Renee.
You're welcome.
Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Any letters and communications, sir?
Not for this work session.
Thank you. Any questions on the prior meeting minutes?
Motion to approve. Second.
Gentlemen, because this is the work session, we don't usually take any formal action, so we'd hold it till next week.
Okay.
Executive Director, General Counsel.
Rick,
Yes,
That's right.
now, who made that first motion? Was that Ralph?
Yes, yes. Every
Hi, Ralph. Ralph, I don't know, something's going on with your mic where you sound muffled.
week it's the same.
Well, we got to do something with that, Sean. Get that fixed.
How's that?
That's a little better than what it was.
How's that?
That's worse.
They turn off after a while.
How's that?
That's a little better. Yeah, it's better than, like I said, when you were really, when you were trying to make the motion,
Okay.
you were very muffled.
Okay. Can you hear me okay, Colleen?
You are a little bit muffled, but this is a little bit better now, Ralph. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Colleen and Renee, can you hear me okay?
No, you're fine.
Okay.
Without you.
You're okay.
Okay. Executive Director, General Counsel, Sean Costello.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The only item under my spot on the agenda is the draft budget that is included in the packet. If any member of the public wanted to compare that to the prior year budgets, which are posted on our website, they would be certainly more than welcome to. I'll note that we will post the Drescher-Malecki rate consultant presentation to the website tomorrow. We received that today, the revised version, and there wasn't time to get it up before the meeting. Beyond that, I attended a meeting today about the potential impacts of the lead service line replacements that are required under the lead and copper rule improvements. We have several years to plan, but there is a potentially very large financial impact. We're hoping, of course, to get most of it covered by grants. But what I learned today is that the median cost for complete lead service line replacements is now estimated at $12,600. Previous figures that we've been using were $8,000 or $10,000. So those have gone up. There's anticipated to be a real crunch in terms of available contracting capacity because everybody's going to be replacing their lead service lines in the next 13 years. We are exploring some options to work with other similarly situated upstate communities such as Binghamton, Albany, Rochester, Batavia, Schenectady, to try to maximize efficiencies and to try to position ourselves for the maximum amount of funding to recognize the financial condition of our respective municipalities. And another goal that we discussed today was finding ways to try to keep the substantial expenditures for lead service line replacements in the community rather than contracting out to a contractor that will take $8,000 to $12,600 per service line and bring those funds elsewhere. So beyond that, I have nothing further for this evening.
Thank you, Sean. Is there any questions on the draft budget for Sean?
Yes, Sean, when are we having the public hearing?
Because there is no rate increase, a public hearing is not necessary. I
Okay.
anticipate if there are no revisions to the budget, there will be an additional resolution in the packet for next week to approve the budget. And that's all that's necessary because there is no rate increase.
I do have a question. My biggest concern is just that I'm happy we're going to go with a 0% for this year because I don't want to see our ratepayers get hit. I do kind of wonder if we probably should go up a little bit this year so it's not a dramatic hit, particularly because we don't know what the future is going to hold in terms of costs. That's my only concern.
So certainly a modest rate increase would be an option, but I feel confident that this budget is very conservative in terms of the projected revenues as well as the expenses. I'm quite confident that the board will meet its obligations this year. Coming off, averaging out the rate increases over the past few years, I think that the board is still where it should be, trending where it should be. Now, of course, we're seeing substantial rate increases from other utilities. I know Erie County Water Authority just raised rates 11%, and their infrastructure surcharge they put on the bill by a similar amount. But it's certainly a board decision. Were the board to raise rates, we would be able to allocate those funds, the additional funds, toward our capital programs. Additional funds in the capital improvement fund would delay the need to go to the bond market for additional monies. But the budget as presented balances in terms of the operating expenses, still meets our debt service coverage ratio.
I think it's important that we maintain a 0% increase. Anytime you increase the budget, the general public will try to blame us for certain things, and quite frankly, I don't want anyone to try to blame our union contracts for the increase, because I know that would be one of the first places where people would like to go. So I think that we maintain a 0% increase this year, and then, like I said, that we really buckle down during the next year to try to make sure that, in fact, we see what we can cut, how things are going to balance out and work toward minimizing an increase for the next year.
You know, Renee, I do agree with you. I think our residents need a break, but I do understand what Colleen's saying because, you know, in different facilities that I've been at, like a 1% increase today, 10 years from now could mean $1 million compounded to the water board. But I think maybe it's best to look at that next year and go with your budget, in my opinion. But I do understand what Colleen's saying.
And I will just offer the comment. I think it's spectacular that we have a board that's willing to seriously consider rate increases. I know that that is one factor that the rating agency, so S&P in our case, looks at is whether boards are willing to raise rates, because sometimes there's some political reluctance to do so. And, of course, the rating agencies are well aware of that. We do continue to enjoy that A credit rating, and we'll maintain that because we will continue to raise rates as necessary to meet our bond obligations. My long-term goal would certainly be modest, small rate increases annually in order to fund a well-planned and gradual capital program and to meet rising operational expenses, while finding ways to lower operational costs on a year-to-year basis and applying for as many grants as possible to offset those capital costs. So I do think that long-term, the board can, expect to be seeing presentations recommending modest rate increases.
Is there any more questions or thoughts on this budget? Okay, I guess.
I'm good.
Okay, Colleen, thank you. Thank you, Renee. Personal items, Sean?
Yes, there's just one item on the personnel action sheet found at page 50 of the agenda packet. As the board's aware, we require a grade 4 New York State DEC grade 4 license in order to operate the wastewater treatment plant. It's been a few years since we've had a grade 4 on staff. We do have one or more staff members who are taking the examination for that license this month. However, the pass rate for the examination is quite low, so we can't count on having a grade 4 in-house immediately. However, I'm very optimistic that we will have one within the first couple quarters of next year. In the interim, for a period of time, the board had a retired chief operator, Fred Casper, serving as the licensed grade 4 holder. Mr. Casper has advised that he'd like to retire at the end of the year. He is willing to go a little bit into next year, but he's not prepared to serve throughout all of next year. The board has been operating on Mr. Conti's license, but given the fact that we are making a couple of other personnel changes, one to add a maintenance supervisor here at the water plant, which will take a lot of the work that Mr. Conti was doing in maintenance, and two, the anticipated grade 4 license holder in-house. The difficult decision was made to eliminate the operations executive position from next year's budget. At the time Mr. Conti was hired, I'll remind the board and anybody who's listening that the board was in a bit of a pinch not having anybody with a grade 4 license. It was unclear at that time whether Mr. Casper would be able to continue to be the grade 4 license. So Mr. Conti came aboard and made his license available. I've had some conversations with Mr. Conti, and he understands that the circumstances that necessitated his hiring have changed, both in terms of the maintenance supervision that'll be handled in a different fashion using a employee-based full-time at this plant for that purpose, and also, the anticipation that we're going to have a grade 4 license in-house, so there's no need to have a full-time salaried employee budgeted for next year. So the action the board will be asked to approve next week is Mr. Droff to return and serve as a grade 4 license holder for the operation of the wastewater treatment plant.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Engineering, Doug Williamson.
Hi, good evening. Just a quick update on a few of our water main replacement projects. We have a final inspection tomorrow, the 77th Street Water Main Replacement Project. That project was completed on time and on budget. We're currently working with Labella Associates on the design of 4 water main replacement projects under the 2021 WIA grant and 3 projects under the 2022 WIA grant that we received. We're currently waiting for approval of the Laughlin Drive, Woodcock Avenue and 85th Street water main project, so we can put that one out to bid. And once bidding and construction is completed for that project, we plan on putting the next project out for bid.
Okay. Are there any questions for Mr. Williamson?
How was we're running a lot of water main breaks. I see. This is the time of year. I
Yeah,
realize, when the temperature changes.
right. The outside maintenance guy could tell you that more, but yes, I'm aware that typically we do when there's freeze thaw. So yeah, that's basically what we do is that one area I mentioned that we're getting approval from the DOH is a bad area. And that's why
Which is where?
Woodcop Avenue,
Woodcop-
Laughlin.
Lock.
Yeah, they have a lot of breaks over there. So we prioritized that, made it number 1. That's all I have. You know.
Any more questions for Doug Williamson? Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Wait. Is that Colleen or Renee?
I just said I was good. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Oh, thank you. Information technology, Mr. Joyce.
Good evening. I'm happy to report that Darktrace and CISA found no high security vulnerabilities in our network. We've been busy trying to patch systems because some of them are going end of life come January. And we also been prepping the network to deploy our new copiers later this month. And also receiving multiple quotes and looking at different technology to upgrade our virtual environment. Other than that, there has been no significant changes since last month.
Is there any questions for Mr. Joyce? No questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Finance, Michael Smith, please.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm continuing to work on catching up with all the various different financial activities. I am reaching out to Brian Mackwitz, my predecessor, whenever I have any questions. I did meet with him last week with regard to the tax transfer process that I'm completing now, and I actually hope to send the city the tax transfer or the account balance transfer to the tax roll, before I leave tonight. Going forward, I'm going to focus on getting ready for year end, and also focus on getting ready for the audit. We have a new employee starting this coming Thursday. I have been, working on, I guess, taking care of all the work that the previous employee was doing. So I should have more time to focus on, accounting type activities when the new employee starts on Thursday.
Is there any questions for Mr. Smith? No questions. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Mr. Carl's not here for safety, so.
No, but I can report on safety for the
Okay, go
board.
ahead.
Just looking back to the prior month, we had our typical safety committee meeting, which is a meeting involving representatives from most of the departments as well as management to resolve issues that come up as they arise. There was a discussion at the last board meeting regarding confined space entry procedures, the use of a rescue team from National Vacuum for a basin clean out. In the budget for next year, you will note that there is $50,000 between the two funds for safety consulting services. My goal is to bring in an outside firm to help us update our safety programs. We certainly are far from starting at zero. We do have plenty of procedures, but to help us navigate some of the trickier issues regarding rescue for basin entries and things like that. You know, we're exploring whether an in-house rescue team makes sense. There's also some other options to eliminate the need to have a rescue team in an on-site standby mode, depending on the way that you can engineer the space. So my expectation is that we will continue to improve our safety program in 2025 with some professional guidance. And that was one of the priorities for funding in this budget.
Thank you, Sean. Is there any questions to Sean about safety? Okay, thank you, Sean. Any questions regarding the November 2024 operations and the maintenance reports? I guess we're good there, Sean.
Well, I got just one
Oh, yeah.
question,
go
I
ahead.
think. And maybe this is, I don't know if this is the appropriate spot, but I think last time I mentioned, I asked about the contractor filling the holes on Frontier Avenue for the 77th water line. And I'd just like to provide feedback, you know, that they did a great job taking care of that and getting the holes filled. And they said they'd be out by November 15th, and they were. So I think fourth generation should be I don't know about what the rest of the work that they did, but at least as far as the closeout, I think that was done very well and getting out quickly.
Thank you, Board Member Dean. That's actually excellent and very timely feedback, because tomorrow we have our final walkthrough with fourth generation. It's actually had to been put off a couple of times, one day because it snowed, one day because of rain. But we'll be sure to convey that
Thank you.
compliment to them when we're on site.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Sean, resolutions.
The first resolution that's in the packet for this month is resolution number 2024-12001, hiring preference for City of Niagara Falls residents. That is found at page 65 of the packet.
Are there any questions on the hiring preference?
Let's have an explanation to this. I know that there was a civil service meeting. But give me some insight.
Sure. So at the November meeting of the Municipal Civil Service Commission for the City of Niagara Falls, it was announced that there would no longer be a residency requirement to apply for civil service examinations. This resolution was requested by board members, and it does two things. One, it directs us as staff to prioritize residents when we are at all stages in the hiring process, so that when selecting applicants for interviews and candidates for positions where candidates are equally qualified, a candidate who is a city resident shall be selected. The resolution further, it directs me to forward a copy to the Secretary of the Civil Service Commission, requesting that pursuant to a provision of the Civil Service Law, the commission provide a list of residents, and then once the civil service list of residents is exhausted, we would move to the list of non-residents. I believe that's the current practice for police and fire positions.
It is. It is.
And so that is part of this resolution.
I have a question. So what is the criteria in terms of if you have a candidate who's in the city and a candidate outside the city, and the candidate outside the city is more qualified? How are we going to approach this?
I think it would depend on the position. You know, many of our positions are sort of entry-level positions. You know, certainly if we had somebody with a master's degree in wastewater sciences, we would take a hard look at them, and they were a non-resident, we would take a hard look at them over a resident. However, in general, we have a sufficient number of residents applying on Indeed.com for those provisional appointments to jobs in the classified service. There has never been a residency requirement for the positions in the labor class. But, we certainly can take a peek at, the residential address listed and, prioritize where things are equal, the residents, in order to give those jobs to city residents who, in addition to the tangible benefit that, they're likely ratepayers, being a city resident increases the likelihood that someone is going to be able to respond to an emergency or a call out for overtime in a timely fashion. So there's a benefit to the board in terms of operations as well.
So this is only for civil service positions, correct?
So the hiring preference would apply to all positions.
Including director level?
Well, yes, including director level. I don't know how often the board.
Well, wait,
No.
no, it doesn't apply to,
No.
I don't think it should apply to not only the director, the top people.
A
Whether it be
a
human
civil
resource-
service test is given for, and I'm not going to single anybody out in this room, Patty, okay? When I was the director of the plant, civil service were my incredible ladies downstairs, Mary Semino, Mona Jacobs, Laura Daniels. Civil service are the operators up here in the operator room. They're the mechanics, inside mechanics. They have to take, when they get hired provisional. Your maintenance workers, your outside maintenance workers are not civil service. So every position is not a civil service position. Most are, but some aren't.
Based on the board's feedback, I can revise this just to make clear that it applies to civil service positions. That's the board's preference.
which would not include a director
Correct.
and people like Michael or, you agree with that, Ralph?
Well, my question is not for our hourlies. Niagara Falls residency.
So we would certainly prefer a Niagara Falls resident for an hourly position, which is not in the classified service, so they don't have to take an exam. Again, all things being equal, this is for equally qualified candidates. If you have two individuals with a similar background, similar education, if it's between the two, instead of a coin toss, we could choose Niagara Falls.
I would always want to do that.
Yes.
I'm, it's hard to determine everything being equal, but that's what we would expect from the human resources manager and yourself. If they're close, that you always give the priority to the Niagara Falls resident. I mean, they pay the water rates, they pay the taxes. I don't understand the reasoning of why the civil service people in the city has changed that. I don't understand why that group and the mayor would not want to give the residents first choice, especially when the city has its own civil service policy. So why they don't want us to have it? And I don't understand civil service 100% yet. I'm getting there, but I believe we should at least give the first shot at the city of Niagara Falls residents.
Now, the civil service, you also pick from the top three? So in other words,
You have discretion.
it's
to pick.
us, okay? So, and he's 4. So they pick you, I'm 1. You become 2, now 4 becomes 3. 5 becomes 4. Yada, 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 right down the line. I know it's confusing, but it really isn't. So you have your choice of the top 3. So because you finish 1 doesn't necessarily mean, am I correct, Mr. President? Council, right? Doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get the job, but it's been the tendency over the past few administrations, and I go back into the 80s with the late Mayor Michael Lachlan, okay? Sometimes one didn't get it, but especially I know in police and fire, they've stuck to that 1, 2, 3 thing. They've as younger people have come in and they've realigned their values and, but you choose from the top 3. The same in the county, right, Dr. Kimball?
You are 100% correct, Ralph.
Thank you.
And I guess, Sean, if I understand this correctly, it's whoever the selecting official is, they have the discretion to select from residents, especially when you have a pool of candidates that are all well qualified and in the civil service, that's within a certain score, right? On the exam. And then if you're not in the civil service, it's based on the selection panels or the selecting officials' evaluation of who the top candidates are.
Yes, I think that understanding is correct.
Okay.
I have,
And
oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jim.
what I'd like to see added to the hiring preference is a residency requirement similar to what the teachers have, where employees that are hired, newly appointed employees, the current, permanent employees would be exempt, but for any newly appointed position that they would have to become a resident within 6 months, they could receive a waiver for another 6 months to establish residency, and then develop some criteria on how they would, prove that they have established residency. Subject to the board's approval.
Yeah,
You know?
well, I think we got to put some thought in that. I'm not sure, depending on the job, if you think you got a qualified guy, or man or
Mhm.
woman, will that scare someone off? I don't know. Got to think about that one a little.
And I
board.
think depending on who the selecting official is, we can write it in here with the same. The selecting official would have the same discretion that among the top candidates. If somebody, if we're going to give preference to Niagara Falls residents, and we want them to be residents, for all the reasons, that Sean stated. But
Which is bullshit.
thank you, Colleen. Well,
Go on, finish, Jim.
but I think if we can see either have this amended to, and I can send you the language that I think might be appropriate for establishing residence after you're hired.
I have a question. We have people who are currently employed here who are not residents, who were not impacted by the civil service exam. Are this going to apply to them, yes or no?
That's correct, but if the Civil Service Commission hadn't changed their rules, we wouldn't be in this situation.
Well, now the civil service has changed the rules, so we have employees who are currently here.
And the current employees would be exempt. This is a new policy
It's only going forward as of what date?
as of the date that the board would approve it.
Yeah, but the current employees, they're provisional, they're not permanent. I'm not sure which employees you're talking about.
I'm talking about permanent employees. Anybody that's provisional and that hasn't taken the test yet, that hasn't been offered a permanent position off that civil service test, okay, they would be required to establish residency
Because they're not permanent.
because they're not permanent.
We have never had a residency requirement for the Niagara Falls Water Board since this city spun it off on its own.
We
My
never had,
question is, we are now going ahead and saying, even though it is not a city agency, that we want the Niagara Falls Water Board to go ahead and make this a civil service only employees, so that they only have to take, if they're provisional, they have to move to the city or they don't get to take the test. Okay, I'm just calling this, as I did earlier. We cannot do this. This is not okay. And I do not want to hear it from somebody who lives in the town of Niagara.
What is the difference where I live?
Well, first of all, let's go ahead and put a provision in there that all board members should live in the city of Niagara Falls, because we're making decisions for the ratepayers, and maybe a town of Niagara resident
Right,
should not
yes.
be doing that. Your
Well-
child lives in the city, a town of Niagara. He's an
And-
employee.
Yeah, I know my child lives in the town of Niagara and he is not in civil service. And, that particular group with the outside group can live anywhere.
Well, that's
You
the
should
thing.
know that.
Making-
See, what's
we're making-
caused the problem, here's what's caused the problem. And let's be honest, what's caused the problem in the first place is not only what they did in civil service a month ago, it's what's also caused the problem is you have unqualified people working in this water board that you approved along with the last water board. They're not qualified. They don't live in the city and it's a mess. And this board, wait, now I'm talking the guy from the town of Niagara. Now it's up to this water board to try to correct it. Okay. So we're trying to figure out ways without hurting anyone to correct the mess that we all walked into, because we did walk into a mess.
Oh.
Okay. And you led that mess.
First of all,
Okay.
all right, no, I'm talking now. Mr.
Go ahead.
Costello, can you tell Mr. Sirianni how many people I actually appointed to work in any positions in the Niagara Falls Water Board, outside of the directors of which I had the capability as the evaluation chair?
I don't believe that you were directly involved in hiring individuals other than directors.
And that's fine. And I never accused her, but
Yes,
she
you did.
was.
Yes,
No,
you
I
did.
didn't. I said you approved. Okay.
No, actually,
you
I did not
voted.
approve
You,
anybody
you,
hiring.
you voted for the last chairman who brought in a lot of friends and family who aren't even qualified, brought them in here, and you voted yes. And I don't even know how many of them, but many. So you're just as responsible for the person who brought them in.
Well, first of all, Mr. Sirianni, let's be clear on something. You want to start
Yes.
talking about qualifications? We can go on to the fact that there are plenty of people in hourly positions that we can question their qualifications to. If you want to go across the board and hiring preferences, let's go ahead and make everybody has to be a City of Niagara Falls resident. Start with that. You want to do that?
No.
Make it across the board right now.
All you want to do is try to attack me and my family. That's
Oh,
not
you're
going to
not
happen.
attacking other
That's
people's
not going to
families.
happen,
That's all you
okay?
wanna do is attack
That's
other
not going to happen. You created the mess along with other board members that left, and we're going to try to correct it the right way without hurting people. All of a sudden, you really worried about protecting some people that I'm not even sure who you're talking about.
First of all,
That's
even
all you
yourself-
worry about. What did you do? Get your marching orders tonight? You get your marching orders to come in here and try to make sure we
I
don't
make my own
try to do
decisions.
what's right?
I make my own decisions.
Yeah, you do. You do. Sure you do. I know better. I know better. And so does everyone else in this room know better. So anyways, is there any more discussion on this? Go ahead, Ralph.
Right, so getting back to what you said, I understand what's in here. You want to just be real quick. You want to do something for,
It would be for provision, it would apply to provisional employees of the civil service. So if and when they are offered, or, if they pass the test and they end up in that top score, okay, we're either going to give preference to Niagara Falls residents, or if at the selecting official's discretion, he selects somebody from outside the city, they will have 6 months to move into the city, and they can get a waiver for another 6 months at the discretion of the board.
so you're going to take somebody from the resident list and there's a non-resident list.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to choose from the resident list first?
We are. That's what this policy
Okay,
right now
right.
is written,
That's what I
is to
thought I
give,
read.
is to give preference.
Right.
But it's also at the discretion of the selecting official to not select from, it says it shall give preference. So I'm not, if I understood it right, Sean, is that somebody's not locked in to absolutely giving Niagara Falls resident.
No, in
preference.
civil service, the resident list takes precedent. You never go to the non-resident list unless and some of these lists are short. They're not, believe me, they're not volumes. Like, especially when you get into specialized positions. You never go to the second list unless you exhaust it first.
Okay, well, if that's,
That's the way it
if
is.
that's the case.
And Ralph,
Am I right?
Sean?
Ralph is 100% correct. That's how
Thank
civil.
you. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay,
But there is that secondary list. And a lot of times, I think a couple of times it's been done in police and fire. Very specialized positions. I think,
Ralph, it has been. It
okay.
has.
Ralph, I think what Jim said was residents have the first priority based on the human resources and Sean. But if they go to a non-resident, what he's suggesting for a discussion is they have to move within the city within 6 months.
Understanding that the residence list always takes precedent. You never go to the second until the first residence list is exhausted. Now, a lot of people take civil service tests and don't really have, a lot of people have this philosophy, there's no good plan A without a plan B. They'll just take civil service tests to be on the list. God forbid if something happens to their normal flow of income, or something really pops up that's better than what they have. So just because you have 27 people or 15 people on the list doesn't mean 15 people are actually going to take the position, even if they're offered. But you never jump to the non-resident list until that first list has been totally exhausted. That's a point I want to make.
and it's assuming that you have
As long as we got that,
a list of residents, yes.
I,
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
I think that there's just one further challenge to discuss. So with the non-resident list, there's long been the case that certain positions are difficult to recruit for. Not to single any particular position out, but systems engineer. We've been unsuccessful at finding any candidates that are city residents. It is somewhat unlikely that were we to identify a non-resident candidate, that asking them to move to the city, that they would be willing to do that. So if we're just going to stick, I think it's easiest if we stick with, if there's a resident list, we hire off the resident list and then go to the non-resident list only when the resident list is exhausted. In that case, I don't know if the board would want to have a requirement that because it's exhausted the resident list. So theoretically, all the people who are residents who wanted the job, took the civil service test. I don't think it would be favorable to recruitment if those people, the non-resident list, were required to move in order to take the job.
And that's where I was trying to state that the water board would have some discretion. Depending on the difficulty that is recognized in hiring certain positions, like for the SCADA.
I have a question. Mr. Costello, can you tell me where the residency of the person you're planning to hire for this new position for procurement is located in?
For procurement?
Well, not the procurement, excuse me, the new position, planning and resources. I'm sorry. Are they living in the city of Niagara Falls?
No, I don't believe that the individual who's likely to be selected is a Niagara Falls.
Okay, and so are they going to have to go through the civil service and possibly be not hired based on the fact that maybe there's somebody within the city of Niagara Falls who's equally qualified?
No, because the civil service law provision that's cited in the resolution says that you cannot have a resident preference list for promotional examinations. And planning and resource coordinator is promotional, or the hiring would be on a promotional basis.
Mhm.
You're talking about like an HR, so that wouldn't be civil service, would?
No, we're talking about a civil service position, planning and resource coordinator.
Right.
We're going to have one here.
Right,
In
right.
place of, for a while, we had a supervisor of maintenance position. That is a promotional job. The prior service requirement is that you have to have had a mechanic title for 6 months before. So somebody who's permanent in the mechanic or the operator title, the eligible titles would be eligible
Okay.
to take that on a promotional basis.
Just, that's fine. When we talk about civil service, remember, we're governed by a higher authority. It's the New York State Civil Service Commission. So we really can't step over the boundaries without possibly getting your hand stamped down the road. or your feet stepping on down the road. So although we have a local service commission that issues for the city, the school district, and I think the county also. No, the county has their own. We're still obliged to follow the New York State Civil Service guidelines. So, okay.
Well, we're not voting on this till next week.
No.
Just discussion.
Yeah, just discussion. Why don't we think about that particular language and for the week, okay? Would you be fair with that? Sure.
Yes, and I could
There's
circulate
obviously disagreements on something,
amendment.
so. Okay, thank you. What's next? Is there any more questions on this? Okay, second agenda item, Sean.
The next resolution is found beginning at page 67 of the packet, Resolution 2024-12002, repair of wastewater treatment plant intermediate pump motor rectifier wheel.
Is there any questions on the intermediate pump motor? Okay, the next one, Sean, mission statement.
Resolution 2024-12003, found beginning at page 69 in the packet, 2024 annual review of mission statement, adoption of and report on performance measurements, and report on operations and accomplishments. This resolution satisfies certain requirements of the Public Authorities Accountability Act that the board on an annual basis review, well, for example, its mission statement, that it have a performance measurement report, a report on operations and accomplishments. The language in these reports is fairly similar to what's been adopted for the past couple of years. There is no change recommended to the mission statement or the performance measurements.
Thank you. Any questions on the mission statement? Annual review of procurement.
At page 73 of the packet is Resolution 2024-12004, annual review of procurement and investment policies. Again, this is a requirement of the Public Authorities Accountability Act. There are no changes recommended to the procurement or investment policies.
Board meetings. Oh, any questions on the annual review? Anyone? Thank you. Board meeting schedule.
Yes, the Resolution 2024-12005, 2025 Water Board meeting schedule found beginning at page 94 of the packet, followed at page 95 with the proposed meeting dates. Those meeting dates are, to the greatest extent possible, keeping consistent with the practice of a work session on the third Monday and a business meeting on the fourth Monday. Because of the way the holidays fall in 2025, the board will note that there are several months without a scheduled work session. The board can, of course, schedule additional meetings at its pleasure. But this would be the calendar proposed that we would send out to media and the regular meetings.
And if we need one, we just schedule one.
Yes.
What's the procedure to schedule?
So-
Is it a majority vote or is it 60%?
So the board chair can call a meeting, or 2/3 of the body, which in practice means 4, can schedule a special meeting.
So 2/3 or the chairperson? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay, is there any questions on the water board calendar? Okay, thank you. Any unfinished or old business? Any new business or additional items for discussion? I'd like to make a motion to go in executive session for the purpose of matters leading up to the employment of a particular person. And I think there won't be no business done after that, after it. So you're more than welcome to stay or go. That's up to you. Is there a motion to go in executive session?
I'll make it.
Ralph,
Second.
second. Roll call.
Board Member Aversa,
Yes.
Board Member Dean,
Yes.
Board Member Kimball,
Yes, to go to executive session.
Board Member Larkin,
Yes.
Chairman Siriani.
Yes,
Okay. The time is 6:05. I'll announce for the purpose of the recording that this meeting will remain open. Those in the room would be advised that the microphones may be muted, but I can't guarantee that comments made while the board is in executive session won't be caught. The board will return to the open meeting to adjourn when the executive session is concluded. And board members Kimball and Larkin, I have sent you the link for a Teams meeting. So if you can give us just a moment to get that set up, it will be ready to go. Thank you. Renee, are you able to hear us? Renee, I think that the device that you connected with is not connected for audio, perhaps?
Uh-huh. Renee or Colleen, can you hear us?
Hello.
This is Colleen on the call.
Hi, Colleen. Renee, are you
Hey,
able to
what?
hear us? I'm going to send Renee a text message.
Renee, are you there?
I definitely think she's there. I just, I'm not sure why we can't hear.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I'd like to get a motion to come out of executive session.
Move it.
Motion. Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Okay, I'd like to enter into the regular board meeting. Is there, get a motion?
Make a motion.
Move it.
Ralph, Colleen, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. Ayes have it. I get a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Move it.
Motion.
Renee
Second.
and Jim, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Thank you for attending, everyone.
And I'll state for the purpose of the recording, the time is 7:34 PM. Thank you.